What happens when a comedian with a camera sets off on the world's longest road? In this episode, Matt Savino, author of Land Without a Continent, shares his soul-stirring journey along the Pan American Highway, weaving together humor, hardship, and humanity. From uprisings to quiet sunsets, this is a story about finding connection in the chaos. Welcome to Journey with Jake. This is a podcast about adventure and how through our adventures we can overcome the challenges of life that come our way. While I expect you will learn some things about different adventures, this show will entertain you. Each episode will feature a different guest or guests as they share experiences and stories from the different adventures they have been on. Not only will you be entertained, but you will also hear the failures and trials each guest faces and what they have done or are doing to overcome the hardships that come their way. My goal is to take each of us on a journey through the experiences of my guests with the hope that you'll be entertained and inspired to overcome your day-to-day challenges. After all, it's not all about the destination as it is about the journey. Before we dive into my conversation with Matt Savino, just a quick reminder to follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an adventure. You can also find me on Instagram at Journey with Jake Podcast for behind-the-scenes clips, personal stories, and clips of current and upcoming guests. If you enjoyed today's episode, I think you'll also love episode 118 with Nikolai Daughter, where we explore his epic solo journey along the Pan American Highway. Another incredible story of courage, creativity, and self-discovery. All right, let's get started. Here's my conversation with Matt Savino. Well, this is exciting for me. I've got Matt Savino on the show with me today. Matt, welcome to Journey with Jake.
Hey, welcome.
Yeah, this is great. You're like all over the place. You've done all kinds of things. We're really going to talk about a trip that you did, I think back in 2017 on the Pan American Highway. We're going to talk about that probably more than anything, but you've done all kinds of things. I think I saw stand-up comedy in there. I think you've been a photographer. I think you've done all kinds. Before we dive into all that and who you are, how about a little background? Where are you from? Where you grew up? That sort of thing.
So I grew up in Kansas City. This is my little Kansas City Chiefs mug right here.
There you go.
I drink water out of all day. Yeah, grew up in Kansas City. Moved to San Francisco about in 1996. Actually, I lived in the Virgin Islands for a little while after college, just kind of screwing around, and then came back to Kansas City, and then eventually moved to San Francisco. And at the time I was doing stand-up comedy, and the original plan was to move to Vegas and do it, but that makes no sense. Vegas is where you go at the end of your career, not the beginning of your career. And just bumped into a guy I knew in San Francisco doing comedy at this random bar, and I was like, okay, maybe I should just move here instead. Lived there for 5 years, and about that time the comedy was okay. Like, I kind of enjoyed it, but I didn't really like the process all that much. I hated just the lead up to it, and watching a bunch of amateur comedians bomb a lot of the time is like, I would rather be on stage bombing myself than having to watch somebody else, and the only solution is just to get drunk, but that's not really a good life plan if that's what you're trying to do is your avocation. So and it was like the .com days, the late 90s, and
Yeah.
I have a degree in physics and a minor in creative writing, so there you go, there's some dabbling. But I was a terrible student. There was no question that I was going to not go on and do anything with physics, but I did like my computer programming classes and electronics class, where you actually get to play with chips and figure out how they work, and by far more than anything else. So I was like, kind of age 29 hit. I was like, I need to get some kind of real career going. And I took just a few programming classes at San Francisco City College. It was $13 a credit hour.
Hey,
And
there you go.
that my whole career is based on the $78 I spent on those two classes. And so then did that for a while, and then wound up getting a job offer in LA and moved down here in 2000, I think, and I've been here ever since. So
Okay,
there was got into poker for a little while, and then kind of took off a total of 3 years in two different stretches, trying to play online, and I wasn't great at it. I got by, which was kind of cool to be saying I'm making a living at poker, but I wasn't breaking the bank by any means. There's a lot of soft skills you need for poker, like the ability to endure bad beats and not let it get under your skin, not go on tilt is what they call it. And I was terrible at that. Like, I got notes from the neighbors because I was screaming at my computer and pounding on my desk. So that's a pretty good sign that that's not meant to be the career either. But I
it's
have
just
always liked
amazing.
writing, and
Yeah.
and it's something in the back of my mind I always wanted to do. I just didn't really have anything to write about. And so, I took this trip in the 2017 and came back, and it's kind of trying to write it, but I don't know if it would have happened. And then COVID hit, and I have all this extra free time, and I'm not traveling anywhere for a while anyway. And that ended up kind of being the impetus. It took me 4.5 years to write the book of research and writing. I think I could do it a little faster now because I had no idea what I
Got
was
some
doing. But
practice.
yeah, but it still is a pretty serious effort.
For sure. And we're gonna dive into that. But I'm just looking at all the things you've done, stand-up comedy, poker. I mean, your physics and creative writing. That's kind of interesting. I mean, this just seems like a different kind of combo to study.
Yeah. And it's something that I kind of forgot about until I started writing the book. And I wait, I do have a minor in creative writing. That's right. I've just, yeah, I think I've always been interested in both sides, in creativity, but also very much problem solving. A lot of that comes up in computer programming because it does require a lot of creativity. People might not think that, but thinking outside the box, solving these problems. And then also, depending on how specialized the place you're working is, you might end up doing a lot of the user interface, the user experience as a programmer. And that usually goes pretty badly because programmers aren't very good at it generally. They're not good at putting themselves in someone else's shoes. But I think it helped waiting table. When I was doing comedy in my 20s, I waited tables off and on for years, and getting that mindset of, the customer is always right, and just figuring out what they want, before they even know they want it. And so I like that side of programming. Like I actually like doing the user experience and the UI UX type stuff. And so I guess it kind of goes along with that. And I know programming is a really good job for me because I get into flow state, and where 8 hours just goes by like that.
Wow. Okay.
And I was hoping that's how writing would go. And writing never went like that. Writing is a slog. And it made me feel good talking to other writers too. That
Similar experiences with other writers.
Yeah. Yeah. There aren't too many of them that say, yeah, I just sit down and it just flows. It's always kind of a grind,
Grinding it out. Again, very interesting background that you have, all the things that you've done. What led you to
Yeah, it sounds interesting on paper. I don't know if it's that interesting. You can make it sound interesting if you want.
Before we dive into all your Pan American Highway adventure that you had, what was your family life like growing up? Are you an only child? Do you have any siblings? What was that kind of the situation like?
Only child of divorce. My parents got divorced when I was 5. And so I think do you ever listen to the Rewatchables podcast, the Bill Simmons, it's a movie podcast.
I haven't listened to that one.
He's a sports guy, but they made this movie podcast, and he's almost my age and also child of divorce, grew up with like cable TV, in the late 70s, 80s. And yeah, that show just hits me right in the feels because that reminds me of what my childhood was like. But I think so. My dad's a poet, basically had a master's degree in literature and very, intellectual guy. My stepdad that kind of raised me through a lot of my formative years was this kind of hard ass guy from Texas and into hunting and fishing. And I like that I had that experience of getting two different worlds. And I think my stepdad definitely gave me my love for the outdoors, which is kind of what this trip is all about. It's not totally outdoors, but definitely getting out there. And so yeah, it was sporadic, but it wasn't any, there's no major, I feel like I got by without any major trauma or craziness, and my mom and dad would fight sometimes, but they were fighting over who got to see more of me, which is, better than the opposite, I guess.
Yeah,
for
for
had to
sure.
take care of me.
Right. Okay. Very good. So only child, of a divorced family, divorced parents. What led
Yeah.
you to this whole, Pan American Highway? What made you want to do this trip?
Well, so for a while now, yeah, there's the photography thing too. And I haven't been, I don't want to make it sound like I'm making a living at it because there's a million different landscape photographers out there. So I would go on these photo trips, and there's this guy named Mark Adamus who's a professional landscape photographer, and it was a lot of fun. I was more as much for the adventure as the photography because he likes, if he thinks there's going to be some great picture, he just is off, and you're following him down to, the first night of the first trip with him, we wound up in a pretty dicey situation in Glacier National Park. And we were way down 8 miles from the trailhead, way down in this kind of natural bowl. And it just opened up rain right at sunset. We were trying to get like sunset shots, and we had to kind of make our way back. It was dicey, but I liked it. And the next morning, everybody was all energized, a bunch of office drones had just had our big wilderness adventure. Everybody was pumped. So I ended up going to Patagonia, a trip to Patagonia with him, a year earlier, I think like 2016 or 2017. And the only cars, so you have to go back and forth between Chile and Argentina because Patagonia is kind of on both sides. And the only cars that you could rent that would let you do that and go through the borders were these horrible little, like, if you remember the Geo Metro, like they're,
I used to drive a Geo Metro.
yes, like, and the tires were like the fake spares that on other cars, that,
Yep.
except just
Little
four of them.
donuts.
And we popped 2 tires just in like a few days. And I was sure I was going to die. And we saw another one of those that did roll. And then you kind of see the same people hiking around. We saw the girl hiking with like 2 black eyes and a bandaged nose. And it was like something out of a John Hughes movie or something, like, but still out there hiking, So anyway, while we were on that trip, he's arranging another trip. He's calling it expedition to go into the fjords in southern Chile, and these places where like amateur landscape photographers have pretty much never been. Only government scientists. You can't just go in there. You have to get permission and all this stuff. And I saw him arrange this with the captain, and I got all excited. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. So the plan was to do that the next year, but it would still also involve a lot of driving around. And I didn't want to die in one of those cars. That was the whole impetus. I'm like, can I drive? So I just Googled, can you drive to South America? And it turns out you can, but there's the Darien Gap between Panama and Colombia, and you got to ship your car around that. At first, it sounds like there's a nice ferry, and then you realize the ferry went out of business in like 92 or something. But you end up sharing that container you find a container buddy, and you split the cost, and you put 2 cars in one container, and it's a big pain, but people do it. So that was the genesis. That was where I said, all right, I'm going to try to do this and either take a leave of absence from my job or something. And then I worked for AT&T, who had bought out DirecTV, and they offered a layoff to pretty much all the former employees of DirecTV. And it was coincided right when I was thinking about asking for a leave of absence anyway. So I just said, all right, I'll take the layoff and take the severance and let the chips fall where they may. And yeah, that was the start of it. That was the genesis.
What's amazing is the whole idea that I hated these little cars so much that you're like, let me just drive there.
I just started fantasizing, what if I could have my own big Toyota FJ Cruiser, nice 4-wheel drive, big, comfy, wide wheelbase, isn't going to roll on the highway. That was it. And it ended up that I didn't give myself anywhere. Like, I thought I was going to get all the way to South America in like 4 months from LA to Patagonia, which is way too fast for a trip like that, unless you're really trying to do it just as a speed run, and then it's no fun. So
Yeah.
I figured that out pretty quick. And then I was like, all right, I'll park my car somewhere. I'll fly down to Patagonia and do that. But then I got plantar fasciitis pretty bad in my foot, which is one of the reasons why I came back from after Panama and didn't do South America. And all the hiking we were going to do, I was going to be screwed. So I ended up not going on that trip. So yeah, the whole reason for doing it didn't happen. But then I ended up, spending 7 months going from LA to Panama and having a pretty great trip and a lot of adventures.
I think that's what's amazing is, your journey didn't go as planned necessarily.
Yeah, not at all.
You didn't even make it. You didn't even make it to South America.
Nope.
Got as far as
And
Panama.
my blog is named Ushuaia or Bust. And Ushuaia is the southernmost city in the world.
In Argentina, yeah.
And so I've been in bust mode for 7 years now. And I am anxious to get back out there. Now that the book's done, I'm just trying to figure out the timing. And it's a little scary to be like an out of work computer programmer in your 50s, but I got to do it. I work for UCLA now, and they might give me a leave of absence, but I haven't asked them yet. Hopefully none of them watch this podcast.
Yeah. So speaking of that and continuing the journey, will you kind of just pick up in Panama? Is that kind of what you want to do? Pick up from there and keep heading, or?
Yeah. So that was a big decision of mine because I didn't get to see all of Nicaragua that I wanted to, because we'll probably talk about later. I got stuck. There's a big uprising there in 2018. And so I kind of wanted to go back and do that. And I thought it'd be fun to see some of the places I went and bring a book and be like, hey, you're in this book. But then I started thinking about all the border crossings, and they're such a pain in the butt. And it was like, they were kind of fun the first time because it was unique, but doing it again. So the other option is to just ship my car straight to Colombia and start there, which is what I would have done. I would have had to ship my car from Panama to Colombia. Anyway, and I'm leaning towards that now.
Okay.
And I'll go visit some of these places while the car is en route, but I'll just go there like a normal traveler without my own car and go visit some things. And I really liked Antigua, Guatemala. It's probably my favorite place on the whole trip. It's this old colonial town. It's up in the mountains, so it's cool, which is one of my most important criteria. Probably the single most important one. That's like the cutoff is if it's too hot. No, I'm not going to live here. But so yeah, I would spend some time there. I really enjoyed it there, and maybe a few other places.
Well, my next question was, asking about maybe, some highlights or a place or a moment that sticks with you. You mentioned Nicaragua. Yeah. What happened in Nicaragua? Because I know there was an uprising. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So Nicaragua, I was in Honduras getting ready, going to go to Nicaragua in a week or two. Some friends of mine from LA had come down to hang out in Honduras. We went to Utila Island and we're diving. It was wonderful. Another favorite place on the trip. And I guess Ortega, who's the Sandinistas had this revolution against this U.S. supported dictator Somoza in 1980. And it's kind of been up and down since then. And they actually had real elections, but then Ortega managed to get elected again. And now he's just turned himself into a dictator, just like the ones they overthrew in 1980. But they still have some semblance of socialism, except there were one of the hostels we were at, they were doing a charity event to pay for kids' high school. And I'm like, why do they have to pay for high school? And I asked these kids, yeah, I know Nicaragua's poor, but the trade-off is you're supposed to have good education and good healthcare, right? They're like, yeah, that's all a lie. I'm like, oh, that's depressing. But so Ortega decided to, because the government's running out of money, raise the age of what their version of Social Security, and also raise the amount you have to put in, or lower the benefit or something like that. And mostly it's just students and senior citizens came out and protest. And for some reason, they cracked down on these really hard, and they're shooting people with rubber bullets and beating people up. And that blows up on social media, and then the whole country blows up. And then people are rioting everywhere. There's, I think 30 people died or something. It wasn't guns versus guns, because the government has all the guns in Nicaragua, most of them anyway. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to Nicaragua. And then it calmed down. And, I'm emailing people in the hospitality industry, and they're like, yeah, you can come now. It's fine. I'm like, okay, sure. And the plan was, well, if things get crazy again, I'll just bug out and go to Costa Rica. And things were fine, but I missed by about 2 hours. I went diving in the Corn Islands, which are wonderful, by the way. Nicaragua is a great country. You can go visit it now. You probably won't get caught up in all this craziness. And if you don't have your own car, it's a lot easier. And I come back, and I'm trying to drive back across the country. And apparently the roadblock I ran into had been up for about 2 hours. And that's the roadblocks are the way the primary means of protest all across Latin America. They'll just shut down commerce or traffic and to make a point. And usually they'll let it go after a day, okay, we made our point, blah, blah, blah. But there have been some ugly ones in Mexico, and sometimes they want money. I went through one in Chiapas, Mexico, that's run by the Zapatistas, who are these kind of semi-separatist group that they have somewhat autonomy. So really it's kind of like a government toll road if you look at it that way. It was a little scary because they have apparently sometimes they'll be in a bad mood and go after people's cars, but then it's usually the people tried to drive around the roadblock or do something dumb. So anyway, there's all this stuff about just don't try to do anything dumb with the roadblock. And I ended up spending the night there hoping it was going to be one of these 1-day roadblocks, but everybody was telling me, no, this is going to be a long time. And so the next day I went back to Bluefields on the Caribbean coast, and I came back a few days later, roadblock's still there. All the cars are still there. I see the same people, except they look like they haven't showered for a few days, and they're just hanging around. Truckers are playing cards. I'm like, oh crap. And then I finally heard that they might be letting through ambulances and cars with international plates. So, and I have California license plates. So that ended up being this crazy day where I had to talk my way through these things. And it's a mixture of these peasant farmers and student revolutionaries. And the students all have bandanas covering their face, and they have these homemade rocket launcher things. It's made out of like PVC pipe. It's kind of like an or something. Like, it's not a full stick of dynamite, but it's pretty good blast on like a beefed up bottle rocket or something. Maybe it could kill you if it goes off right by your head. It would probably just bounce off the car, but if they're shooting at your car, you're screwed anyway. You can't get anywhere. They're going to pull you out of the car and beat the hell out of you. So I ended up having to talk my way out through a bunch of those, through a lot of confused, pissed off student revolutionaries. And I picked up these other two guys along the way, and it was probably the craziest day of my life, I would say. Yeah. And that was the dramatic climax. And then after that, it was Costa Rica, which was probably, the wealthiest country in Central America. And so it was total culture shock going from that to a bunch of Costa Rican resorts with coked up frat bros running around. I'm like, I'm not ready for this.
This is amazing. Okay, so you had to talk your way through it. I mean, what's going through your mind? I mean, were you scared at all? Like, what was the thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just hoping that I don't, like, my original fears were that they would be like yelling at me, like, who the hell do you think you are? Look at these people that have been waiting here for a week, which they're right. But I saw one of the guys that I had seen on the first night, and he was like, are you getting through? And I'm like, Talvez, maybe. Like, I didn't want to rub it in, because I went up first and asked. The farmer said yes. So I got to go back and get my car. And then they got to let me drive past all the cars that have been waiting there forever. But they were happy for me. And then people got excited, because it's like 7 days of monotony and the heat. So they're like, oh, something's happening. So by the time I get up there, there's just 100 people or so around the roadblock. And the farmers let me through, because they said they would, but they let me through a weird way that didn't make any sense. But I got out and gave them a 12-pack of beer. That was one of my bartering chips that I brought. I loaded up all these gasoline, like Mad Max, like I'm going to trade gasoline for freedom or something. And I pulled out the 12-pack, and the original guy I talked to, I gave it to him. So he was really happy. He's the big shot now, because I knew a nice cold beer at that roadblock would feel really good. And so but then I hear this, hey, I hear these guys yelling off in the distance. I'm like, shit. And I knew it had to have something to do with me, but I pretended like I didn't hear it, because the farmers were directing me forward, and I just got in the car and went forward. And it ends up turning into a cow field, just like I thought. Like, that is not the road I need to be on. I need to go to the right, not forward. So I have to slink back to the intersection, and here's this little student dude with his rocket launcher standing right in the middle of the road. And I just have to like inch up to him. And I had my windows rolled down so I could hear things, but all the people at the roadblock just converged on me right then. And I'm like, man, I kind of wish my windows were rolled up, but it seems like rolling them up now would be a bad sign that I'm scared of it. And next thing I know, there's all these guys sticking their head in my window, and everybody's yelling at everybody. And luckily, some of them had beers in their hands. So I'm like, well, they're probably arguing for me. And I could hear them yelling the word international. And the little dude made his way around to the car, and he starts just rattling off, blah, 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 like not. Finally, he, to Arma. And I knew what that meant. Like, are you armed? Like, you're armed, dude. That's not me. And he kind of held his little rocket launcher thing, like, damn right I'm armed. And it just, something in my brain was like, okay, maybe this guy just wants to show who's boss. Because the whole thing was, I got yes once. I'm not going to ask again. They told me I could go pass. And so, all right, let me just ask this guy again, I paso, por favor, may I pass? And he just thinks about it for a second and he motioned that I could proceed.
Wow.
That was,
Man.
that was the moment right there. Cause if he says no, I'm screwed. And if I don't get out of there in time and my visa runs out, they probably keep my car. I don't think the government's going to be at all sympathetic because the border people they see a chance to get a lot of money when somebody overstays their. I knew somebody who overstayed their car visa by like 12 hours in Costa Rica and had to end up paying basically what the car was worth to get it back, like $7,000 or something. And it was this thing where there was a lawyer and they were milking them and they're pretty sure the whole thing. So yeah, that was nerve wracking. And people got killed too. Like in Bluefields where I was staying, a reporter got shot and both sides were claiming the other side did it, of course. So it was tense. And there was a fear that I may have to decide between, because you could still fly out from the Bluefields airport, but I'd have to leave my car behind. And the hotel guy was like, oh, you can keep it in this guy's garage. I'm like, yeah, when can I ever come back and get it though?
And what kind of vehicle did you take?
It's a Toyota FJ Cruiser.
Okay, an FJ Cruiser Toyota. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's like a 4-wheel drive. It's pretty rounded. I'd say it looks kind of like a big marshmallow. It's like silver.
Yeah.
Which they never sold in Mexico or Central America. So I stick out like a sore thumb anyway. When I was at that roadblock in Nicaragua, all these people are coming in from the countryside because this is like a big event for them. And the first night, it was like a party. Everybody's having fun. They're playing music. By day 6, everybody was miserable. It was not a party anymore. But every group of people that walked by would notice my car. And then inevitably the guys would turn around and look at me. And I'm like, yep, big redheaded gringo in a silver marshmallow car that's never sold in Nicaragua. That's me. Yeah, that's kind of why I didn't stick around. I was like, the longer I stay here, the more, it's not like there would be any chance for cops to help or do anything if somebody decided to mess with me. But I wasn't ever really afraid. Like even in Nicaragua, like nobody ever asked for money. The one guy who hooked me up with the farmers did at the very end after I was already getting through it. I gave him a few dollars in Cordobas, but Nicaragua has like really low crime even now. And, they're really proud of that. They're just dirt poor. I mean, just the difference crossing the border from Honduras to Nicaragua, you could see, and Honduras is like the second poorest country in Central America. In Honduras, at least, people were driving up to the border in like tuk-tuks and dropping people off. And Nicaragua is these bicycle rickshaws. They didn't even have any powered taxi vehicles at the border. And these poor guys, like in, the Central American heat, pedaling these people in their bicycle rickshaws from the border. But they're going to die.
Amazing. You said you went from LA. So you started in LA. So obviously the first spot you hit is Mexico. That's the first country you go in.
Yeah.
And Mexico's a huge country. Mexico's big.
It is. It's like a bunch of different countries.
Yeah. Okay. So what were your thoughts going through Mexico? What was that like? Kind of your first, experience?
So I had, and this is, to my shame, since I moved out to California, I'd spent a lot of time exploring the West and going to all the national parks, but I'd never been south of Ensenada in Baja, which Baja is like Tijuana is the kind of border city, and then Ensenada's a little nicer, fun city, a little further south. I'd never been south of that. So, and the Baja Peninsula is 800 miles long, and the roads aren't really that good. So you can't do it in less than 3 days. And so that was incredible. Just seeing Baja, it's still so wild. And I just happened to bump into this couple who were really nice. And the guy's kind of a surfer, but not like a hardcore surfer, but into it. We ended up meeting up all the way down the peninsula on different beaches. And I got to kind of experience surf culture a little bit and actually try surfing once, which didn't go great, but it was still a lot of fun. And God, just the natural beauty. There's this in central Baja, there's like a dozen different kinds of crazy vegetation. Like there's these elephant trees that are these big gnarled things that are like as big as a house. There's things that look like the saguaro cactuses in Arizona. There's the organ pipe cactuses. There's a million of those. I forget what else, but the big crazy one that only exists there it's called a boojum tree. And it looks kind of like an upside down carrot, but then the top will like curl around and usually split off into multiple. And then they'll have these orange flowers on the end. And it's total, basically every travel writer that has to mention Dr. Seuss when you talk about the boojum trees. It's a law. You have to say Seussian or Dr. Seuss. But it was so cool. So Baja ended up having these moments that I call Baja moments in the book that were like these hit your the head, like where else on earth would you rather be than right here, right now in this moment? Like this, one of the best sunrises I've ever seen. And I could hear this sound and I didn't know what it was. I was like, are Mike and Kelly having sex in the van or something? Like, what is this? And I realized eventually I saw them. It was dolphins, like maybe 50 yards offshore. And because you could see them breaking the surface. It was the first time I'd ever like heard dolphins before I could even see them. And then we got like a whole nature show of these birds would pick up abalone or whatever and drop it on the rocks and then come down, to break it. It was just like watching some nature documentary with David Attenborough or something. And somehow then Mike and Kelly got up and they had found this watermelon and it just didn't taste like any watermelon you've ever had in your life. It was like the most rich, luscious, crazy. So, and there's just these moments. And if you talk to anybody who travels a lot through World Baja, they'll know exactly what you're talking about, where you're just like, where else on earth would you rather be?
Yeah.
Like, there is no spot that could be better than this right now. And so that was really cool. I spent probably a month, I would say, in Baja, which I wasn't expecting to do. And then you take the ferry over to yeah.
Okay. So then you took the ferry over. Now who's Mike and Kelly? Is that who you're traveling with?
That was the couple I met that the guy was kind of a surfer.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
She was into yoga.
That's Mike.
And they became, I'm still really good friends with them. Yeah. But they kind of introduced me to these different places. They're snowbirds that come down from Whistler, Canada. So
gotcha.
A lot of Canadians in Baja. So they work in the construction industry. And then for the winter, they work all summer. And then for the winter, they come down and they were going for a while, someplace warm somewhere on earth. But, by that point, it kind of settled on Baja, and they've now built like a little vacation house down there. And I haven't been down since they built it. I saw the plot of land the second time I went down. But yeah, so take the ferry over.
Mm-hmm.
Then for me, for central Mexico, I ended up staying in Puebla for a while, taking Spanish lessons, and the food is kind of the highlight of. That's the thing I remember the most about central Mexico is Puebla and Oaxaca are kind of the heart of sort of old Mexico, and they have a pretty fierce food rivalry, which I think keeps both of them on their game,
on their toes.
And I'm Italian. I have to put Italy first, but central Mexico is like 1A to me, and if I wasn't Italian, it might be number one as far as the best food. It's just, there's so many different things that like there's these things called tlayudas that are sort of like a crispy pizza thing or something, just stuff that you'd never even heard of. But you come around the corner and there's somebody, for like $2, somebody's cooking them on these. It's a traditional comal. It's this rounded dish that they cook it on. And it's just incredible. And like the mole, like I really like mole a lot, the chocolate sauce. It's just, yeah. So a lot of food in central Mexico. And then I met up with some people so to me, in my mind, I break Mexico down into Baja, central Mexico, and then the Yucatan. Now, obviously there's other parts, but as there's not a whole lot, it's not super safe near the US border. So, the northern Mexico that's not in Baja is you pretty much, most people just blow through it. You don't spend a lot of time there, but there's still some nice cities, and San Miguel de Allende is really nice. But then I started checking out a lot of like the Mesoamerican ruins, and I didn't know in the book that I was going to do such a deep dive into Mesoamerica. That wasn't really the plan, but I just went to these places because they were interesting. And then I came back and started researching and found out all these crazy stories that were, like in high school, I swear they just taught us like Cortez conquered the Aztecs. That's about all you need to know. We're done,
Yep.
And there's so much. Yeah. I swear we maybe spent one day on 3,000 years of Mesoamerican civilization. So yeah, for the book, I basically just went whatever interested me. And then the same way, because of the crazy adventure in Nicaragua, I ended up kind of doing a deep dive into Nicaraguan politics, which is fascinating. And then from that, to tell that story, I also needed to kind of go into the other Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, and because they all had their own sort of maybe revolutions that were going on, and the U.S. is supporting the dictatorial government, and Nicaragua was the only one that actually succeeded. But it was really interesting to learn all that stuff, and kind of knew the rough outline of that, but I didn't really know a lot of the details. Now, the colonial period in between all that is pretty boring to me. It's like 300 years. Yeah, it was bad. The Spanish subjugated everybody. Some governors stabbed each other in the back or whatever. That's about it. So I didn't spend a lot of time on the colonial period because that didn't really interest me. But
Yeah.
but the cool part was getting to Costa Rica. It sort of made this natural arc. Like, okay, we saw the countries, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, where the revolution did not succeed. Then we saw Nicaragua, where the revolution did succeed. How'd that go? Well, not so great there either. And so which way did Costa Rica go? Well, it turns out there's a third option. Costa Rica disbanded their military in 1948. So they didn't have to worry about a military dictatorship, subjugating their own people. And they basically took the leap of faith that the U.S. would prevent them from getting invaded. The U.S. doesn't want a country in their hemisphere that close to be invaded. And also they felt like if Nicaragua attacks us, we can muster an army in enough time. But other than that, we don't need one. And they're the success story of Central America now because of that,
Wow.
And there's a lot of other I go in the book, there's a lot of other reasons. Costa Ricans are generally they pride themselves on negotiating things out instead of violence, so they kind of had the right disposition, I guess, to begin with. They really did. All that money that they would have spent on military, spent on infrastructure, education, and 25% of the country is national parks. And now that's why it's the jewel of Central America and everybody wants to go visit there. And then Panama is a whole other thing because of the canal. Like everything in Panama is
Yeah.
about the canal, basically. And that was
Yeah.
fascinating too. I rode through the Panama Canal on a small sailboat. Like you can volunteer to be a line handler on these boats because every boat needs one captain and 4 line handlers, no matter how small it is. Just in case the boat has to go through all by itself, you have to tie up to each one of the 4 sides. So me and this Irish guy volunteered on this sailboat with this French couple and their dad happened to be on it. And that was really wild. It was really cool being at the bottom of one of these locks with these giant steel doors. I mean, it's on the scale of fitting the biggest ships in the world.
Yeah.
And we're in there with our little sailboat. It just felt like some Twilight Zone episode or something, and you're looking up at the top. That was a lot of fun. And then I kind of learned the whole history of the Panama Canal and tried to pick out the interesting parts of that and put them in the book.
So let's talk about the book a little bit then. You were leading up to that though. You were blogging about this experience, right? Kind of just in real time or no?
Mostly real time. I think
Okay.
I fell behind maybe, like a month or something. I would be like, okay, I got to get caught up on my blog. I would have the pictures. The pictures kind of helped to make sure my memory didn't lose.
Sure.
And if there's something else, I would take notes. And then, I did the blog. At first I was like, it was kind of still the time when a lot of people, before podcasts really blew up like they have now, and people were still promoting their blogs a lot. And a few people's blogs actually kind of blew up. But I figured out pretty quickly early on, okay, I don't have any angle that's going to make my blog blow up. I'm just going to do this for friends and family, but it's going to be the skeleton for a book that I'm going to write later.
Okay.
And
so you
I didn't
had
know
that in
I
your
was,
mind then? You had that in your mind that, hey, this will probably be a book. Okay.
Yeah. I said it's my Bill Bryson style travel memoir that I'm going to write. And I had no idea I was actually going to complete that. That's what I said. But yeah, it kind of blows my mind that I actually went through with it. But again, COVID, I would have lost my mind if I didn't have something during COVID like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be interesting when I go back and do South America, hopefully pretty soon, within 6 months or so. Doing the blog, knowing now that I'm planning to do a second book, how will I treat the blog differently? Will I be more, I don't know. I don't know what it's going to feel like, but I'm excited to find out.
So what's the name of the book? And I guess it's just then about Mexico and Central America for the most part then.
Yeah. It's called Land Without a Continent. And the reason for that is I always just ask people, what continent is Costa Rica in? Do you know?
Is it North America? I don't know.
You got that right.
Okay.
Which puts you in about 5%, because most people either say South America or Central America. And Central America is correct, but it's not a continent.
It's not a continent,
and
right?
But the funny part is they don't think they're in North America. To them, a North American is a Canadian and a person from the United States.
Yeah.
And that's also, even officially, to them, the Americas is all one continent. Every country south of the US except maybe Belize, like the non-Spanish speaking ones might not think the Americas is all one continent. And I didn't know any of this before the book. That's why like the Olympics flags only has 5 rings on it. It's Europe, Africa, Asia, Oceania, and the Americas, because they made that flag like over 100 years ago. They only turned it into 2 continents in like World War II or after World War II,
Interesting.
which is, yeah, I didn't realize that. Like continents,
Me neither.
it's all about where you learned geography. Like Russia, they don't consider Europe and Asia 2 different continents. They consider it all one continent. They're like, we don't want to be split in half. We want to be all, and Japan too. And then also all the Romance countries in Europe see the Americas as one continent because they're like in solidarity with their Latin American, counterparts. But so to me, Central America feels like the most untethered group of countries that isn't an island anywhere in the world. It just, the place they supposedly live at, according to us, North America, they don't think they're in North America. And hardly anybody in North America knows that they're, according to us, at least technically in North. So it just feels, that's the name of the reason for the title of the book is it feels like a land that doesn't have a continent. And I'm debating if I want to do a whole series of books like South America and then kind of do the whole world. And I'm debating if I should come up with something that's kind of similar. Like South America could maybe be upside down continent but I don't know. I'm not going to torture the metaphor too much if it doesn't work,
Well, in the book, I mean, it's not only just your experience and your travel adventures that you had through the area, but you, like you said, you kind of give some history and things about the places you went through as well, right? Is that what
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever read a Bill Bryson book. That was kind of my eye-opening moment. Like Walk in the Woods. If you haven't, Walk in the Woods is the best one. That's
Okay.
very
I have not
accessible. They
read
made a
his
movie about it with Robert Redford, but it's this funny, he's funny as hell. It's this compelling story, but then he would go on a tangent for 2 pages on the American chestnut tree and what this glorious tree that was as big as like sequoias. But they're all gone now because European blight killed them basically. And I was like, that was like, wait, you can do that? You can be funny, tell a funny, interesting story, but also go into a deep dive in any subject that strikes your curiosity along the way and not just give us like 1 or 2 sentences. Like really, okay, we're going to satisfy, we're going to mine this for everything interesting and then regurgitate that back for you basically. So that's the style. And yeah, I ended up doing a deep dive into Mesoamerica, like the Aztecs, the Maya, because I also visited the site. So it really, and that on that one, I was reading some books and then I couldn't verify the stuff in the books. And I'd find all these crazy things online, but online like might be full of crap. So I was like, how do I even verify all this stuff? I don't want to be out there giving bad information. And just of all places, Facebook ads had this thing, great courses. They have a bunch of different, and it was this course in Mesoamerica from this guy named Ed Barnhart. And I started, and it was like 100. There was like a little 8-episode one that was really cheap, and then the whole 100-episode or the 48-episode one was like 100 and something bucks, and it was great. And I'm like, oh, this is what I've been looking for. I'd say it's kind of like the equivalent of taking like a freshman college level class in Mesoamerica or something like that, maybe. And then it's in the middle of COVID, and I reached out to him like, hey, would you be interested in being the fact checker in my book? And he was willing. So I'm like, oh, this is great. Yeah. Then I knew I had it. And then I'm like, okay, I can actually do this deep dive and I can do it right. And I don't have to be terrified that I'm spewing a bunch of bullshit at people.
Well, that's amazing. And where can people get the book? Like, where is it? Just on Amazon? Like, where can they get the book?
Amazon, bookshop.org. I always like to give them a shout out because they support local bookstores. I've been trying to get into some local bookstores around LA, but that requires hustle and going around with your little tip sheet and bugging people. I tend to do that once. And then if I get rejected, it just, okay, that take me 2 months to work up I don't have it in me to be an entrepreneur. Yeah, pretty much anywhere, Barnes and Noble, anywhere that you can get it online. And there's a Kindle version that's pretty cheap. It's $2.99 now. And then paperback.
Nice. So when people read this, what are you hoping that they get out of it when they read your book?
I hope they think it's funny. And I hope in the end, they think, man, I learned a lot of the worthwhile stuff to know about the ancient and modern history, and also the culture, the people that are there now, the food of this part of the world that for a lot of Americans might as well be a blank spot on the map. A lot of Americans, maybe they'll go to Cancun or Cabo, but people aren't usually going to central Honduras, to hang out. And even though it's right in our own backyard, and also I think that it's very different than what people expect. You think that it's because you see the worst of it. You see the gangs and crime, and it's actually, I don't think I was ever treated rudely once on the entire trip. Like, imagine somebody being able to say that about driving through the United States, and it's just wonderful people. Yeah, so that's, hopefully they get out of it. They laugh, they learn, and they, kind of build up some empathy for this part of the world that's going through it a bit right now, but it's not the fault of most of the people though.
When you set out on this trip, you had something in your mind of one thing, and then obviously you didn't get all the way to South America, like you said. Did it exceed? I mean, did it exceed your expectations? Was it a lot different than you thought? I mean, what? Just kind of looking overall, what was it like for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's definitely exceeded my expectations. It definitely changed me. Can I verbalize all the ways that it changed me? Not really. I tell people, ask me on my deathbed. Maybe I'll have it figured out. But I know it did change me. And I know it changed the way I look at, that part of the world. It also changed the way I look at the rest of my life, in that it cost me at least 3 times more just to exist in Los Angeles than it did to do this trip where I'm driving, or having the trip of my lifetime, driving around and seeing all these places. Like, $2,000 a month is living high on the hog for doing that trip, which is still a lot of money. But, when you're my age and you don't have any kids and you've saved up from a decent job for a while, and so it made me realize, like, even if I spend all my money before I die, I could probably go to Honduras and live on Social Security. So it gave me a little less fear of, because I don't want to do that. I don't want to be one of those people that just saves and then lives on the interest and, screw it. I'm spending the principal. I'm going to go have fun before I go out. Yes, that was probably those are probably the 2 big things. It's just learning. And it's always like that when you travel. That's the whole reason to travel, is that it's never like you think. It's never like what you have built up in your mind.
Absolutely.
And, like in El Salvador, I dropped a 5 out of my pocket, and this guy comes running up to me after me with that at the border in El Salvador. But you'd think the border between El Salvador and Honduras would be kind of a sketchy place to drop a $5 bill. And the guy, came running after me. And by that point in the trip, I would have been surprised if that didn't happen, because I just knew how honest and decent people are down there. And that is not the image that most Americans have. It's not the image that I had before the trip. And I feel like if more people had just a deeper experience with that part of the world, they would have a lot more empathy. And, for the people who are coming here just trying to live the American dream, basically, and work their asses off.
Nice. All right. I'm going to go through, I guess we'll call them rapid fire type questions. We've been chatting for a while, so I kind of want to ask you a few things. So your creativity, which fuels your creativity more? Would you say coffee shop in San Francisco or your road trip through Central America?
Road trip through Central America. Not
easily,
even close.
Not even close. I love it.
Yeah. I don't even drink coffee anymore. It gives me heartburn. So I drink Diet Dr. Pepper. That's my coffee in the morning.
Hey, Diet Dr. Pepper. That's my thing too. I love Diet Dr. Pepper. So I know we mentioned earlier that you were, a modern dabbler. You've dabbled in all kinds of things. So if you could instantly master one new skill today, what would that be?
Speaking Spanish. I can get by just barely, and I've studied hard. I studied hard before the trip. Everywhere that I was stationed somewhere for more than a week, I would find some place to take Spanish lessons, and I can still just barely converse enough to, talk to the hotel people or whatever. I can't have a conversation, and it makes me sad, because on the trip we went to Belize, which is the one place that people speak English, and I realized, oh my God, I can ask people about stuff. I can, banter with the wait staff, and it's just such a better experience. So I would love to be fluent in another language other than English, and Spanish is the one I'd pick because it has the most practical application for sure.
I like that. That's a good answer. So of all your pursuits, software guy, poker, comedy, photography, writing, which one has surprised you the most about yourself?
I guess writing, because I didn't think I had it in me to complete a 500-page book and spend 4.5 years on it. I'm not the most self-motivated person in the world, but I just got in a groove where I did a little something every day. And I think if you do a little something every day, you eventually get something done. And obviously I'm still not, as far as being self-motivated to go out of there and market myself, I'm terrible at it. But at least, I never thought I would complete something as a project as monumental as writing a book, for sure.
I think it's awesome. I mean, like you said, 4.5 years
Yeah.
of working at it. I think that's amazing that you did it. That's awesome. All right, what's one message you'd like to leave listeners who may be looking, or want to make a step to maybe I'll do the Pan American Highway, or maybe some sort of adventure, whatever it may be. What would you kind of advice would you give?
As far as the adventure, yeah, if you're itching to do it, do your research. Don't be stupid about it, but definitely do it. As far as the Pan American Highway, I'm not pushing people to drive it because I don't think that's really, environmentally responsible necessarily. And also it's a pain in the ass. And, it really adds a lot of extra work that there's some benefit in that you can be really spontaneous and go into these rural places as long as you're sure it's safe, and that you couldn't go if you were just backpacking and taking buses and whatever other transit. But you can also backpack most of the time, rent a car every now and then, and still get those same experiences. So I would say definitely do the Pan American Highway, but I'm not encouraging people to do it in their own vehicle because it's probably, it's a lot more environmentally sound to take a bus, I would say.
That makes sense. And my final question, this is a question I like to ask everybody, because Journey with Jake, it's not only your journey, but it's also an adventure podcast. So for you, what does adventure mean to you?
Well, met this guy on the trip who didn't actually make it in the book, but he said that an adventure is something that you may or may not come back from alive, but you will definitely come back a changed person. And I don't think he invented that quote either. I think that's but I love that quote. And another one I love about adventure is the difference between an ordeal and an adventure is attitude. So, if you have that spirit of like, okay, well, this sucks, but it's also an adventure and it'll probably make a good story when I'm done, then you'll have a lot better attitude than if you're just miserable the whole time, when things go wrong.
Matt, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. I enjoyed learning about who you are. Your adventure sound amazing, and just everything else you've done, from photography to poker to comedy. You've done a lot. I think it's amazing. And I'm looking forward to part 2 as well when you get down to South America.
Yeah, when I do South America, for sure. Yeah, this was great. I enjoyed it.
What an incredible journey with Matt Savino. I loved hearing about his adventures along the Pan American Highway, his experience during the uprising in Nicaragua, and how he blends humor, creativity, and curiosity into every experience. Matt's unique perspective as a writer, comedian, and photographer truly embodies the spirit of Journey with Jake, finding meaning in every mile. Be sure to check out his book, Land Without a Continent, and follow his adventures on Instagram at Ushuaia or Bust, and that's Ushuaia _or _bust, to see stunning images and the stories that continue to shape his journey. As always, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate and review the show on Apple or Spotify. It helps others find these inspiring stories. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Journey with Jake Podcast for behind-the-scenes clips, personal stories, and updates on future guests. Next up, I'm sitting down with Melinda and Troy Hicks, the hilarious and heartfelt couple behind Hicks in the Wild on Instagram. We'll talk about love, laughter, and living life with purpose, so you won't want to miss it. Until then, keep chasing adventure, and remember, it's not always about the destination, as it is about the journey. Take care, everybody.